Welcome back, educators. In this video, I'll be talking about an incredibly important topic, culturally responsive MTSS. You've heard me talk about how the multi-tiered system of supports, or MTSS, helps meet students' academic and behavioral needs. However, to truly support every student, we need to ensure that our MTS practices are culturally responsive. I'll explain what it means to have a culturally responsive MTSS framework, why it's important, and how you can implement culturally responsive strategies at each tier. Let's get started. Let's start with the basics. What does it mean to be culturally responsive within the MTSS framework? Culturally responsive MTSS recognizes that students come from diverse cultural backgrounds and that these cultural differences impact how they learn, behave, and interact in the school environment. It's about creating a system that respects and values these differences, while also addressing the unique challenges students may face due to their cultural or linguistic backgrounds. Being culturally responsive in MTSS means integrating practices that are inclusive of all students, especially those who belong to marginalized or historically underserved groups. Why does cultural responsiveness matter in MTSS? Because every student deserves to feel seen, valued, and supported in their unique cultural identity. When schools fail to account for cultural differences, students from diverse backgrounds often face barriers to success. These barriers might be due to cultural misunderstandings, implicit biases, or teaching strategies that don't reflect students' experiences. Culturally responsive MTSS not only improves academic and behavioral outcomes, but also fosters stronger relationships between students, families, and educators. It helps educators identify strengths in students that may otherwise go unnoticed due to cultural or language differences. Now let's break down how we can integrate culturally responsive practices into each tier of the MTSS framework, ensuring that our interventions are inclusive and equitable for all students. At Tier 1, we focus on high-quality, universal instruction for all students. To make this culturally responsive, teachers should ensure that the curriculum, teaching materials, and classroom environment reflect the diversity of the students they serve. Let's see how we can do this. 1. Incorporate diverse perspectives in curriculum. Incorporating books, stories, historical figures, and examples from diverse cultures helps students see themselves in the curriculum. It also broadens the perspectives of all students, encouraging respect and understanding of different cultures. Example: use literature from authors of different cultural backgrounds, or teach math and science concepts through culturally relevant examples. 2. Responsive classroom management. Classroom expectations and behavioral management should be developed with cultural sensitivity in mind. Be aware of how cultural norms influence communication styles, behavior, and interaction in the classroom. Example: some cultures place a high value on collective work rather than individual achievement. Incorporate group projects and collaborative learning to reflect this. 3. Language support for English learners. Ensure that students who are English learners have access to resources and strategies that support language development without alienating their cultural identity. Example: use visuals, native language supports, and peer tutoring to help students navigate content while building English proficiency. Tier 2 interventions provide targeted support for students who need more help than Tier 1 can offer. Culturally responsive Tier 2 strategies ensure that small group instruction takes students' cultural backgrounds into account, so interventions are both effective and inclusive. 1. Culturally relevant interventions. Interventions should be tailored to students' specific cultural contexts. This might mean modifying instructional materials or using culturally relevant examples to better connect with students' experiences. Example: for reading intervention, choose texts that reflect the cultures of the students in the group, or integrate bilingual support for students who are learning English. 2. Addressing cultural bias in assessments. When identifying students for Tier 2 interventions, it's important to use culturally unbiased assessments to ensure students are not being misidentified due to cultural differences. Example, use multiple data points, such as observations and culturally neutral assessments, to identify students in need of support and avoid relying solely on standardized tests. 3. Engaging families in culturally appropriate ways. Invite families into the intervention process in ways that respect their cultural values. Some families may respond better to face-to-face conversations rather than written communication, or prefer meetings at times that fit around their work schedules. Example, schedule intervention meetings in the evenings or offer interpretation services for families who speak languages other than English. At Tier 3, students receive highly individualized and intensive support. These interventions must be culturally sensitive and responsive to the specific needs and challenges faced by students from diverse backgrounds. 1. Individualized, culturally relevant support plans. For students in Tier 3, individualized support plans should take their cultural background into account. This includes understanding their home environment, linguistic needs, and any cultural factors that may affect learning or behavior. Example, a behavior intervention plan BIP for a student should reflect cultural norms, such as family structures and values around discipline or respect. 2. Building strong, trusting relationships. Students in Tier 3 often need intensive social-emotional support. Building strong, trusting relationships with culturally responsive practices helps create a safe environment where students feel valued and supported. Example, a teacher or counselor might take time to learn about the student's cultural background, showing interest in their traditions or incorporating culturally relevant activities to build rapport. 3. Collaboration with culturally informed specialists. When needed, schools should work with specialists, such as bilingual educators or cultural liaisons, to design and implement Tier 3 interventions that respect the student's cultural and linguistic background. Example, working with a bilingual speech therapist to ensure language development interventions are culturally appropriate and effective. Finally, let's talk about how to build a culturally responsive MTSS framework in your school. This doesn't happen overnight, but there are concrete steps you can take to get started. 1. Professional development. Ensure that all staff receive training on cultural competence and responsiveness. This will help teachers and support staff recognize and address their own implicit biases and better understand the diverse backgrounds of their students. 2. Data analysis with cultural awareness. When analyzing student data to identify who needs interventions, consider how cultural factors might influence performance. Look for patterns that might indicate cultural or linguistic biases in your assessments or instruction. 3. Engage families as partners. Involving families is key to creating a culturally responsive MTS framework. Encourage family input and partnership in the intervention process by respecting their cultural values and communication preferences. 4. Reflect and adapt. Finally, continually reflect on and adapt your MTSS practices to better meet the needs of your diverse student population. This is an ongoing process, and it requires a commitment to equity and inclusion. To wrap up, culturally responsive MTSS is about ensuring that all students feel seen, valued, and supported within the MTS framework. By embedding culturally responsive practices into each tier, we can create a more equitable learning environment where every student has the opportunity to succeed. Thanks for watching today's video. If you found this helpful, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts or questions in the comments section. We look forward to seeing you in our next video.